We've been spending a few weeks now in Mark 6, and lots happens in Mark 6. And one of the things, remember, he goes back to his hometown and he's not greeted well, and that they don't feel like he can teach them anything. And it is after this point where he changes what he does, and he says to the men, it's time now to go out. And I want you to go out 2 by 2, not alone, but I want you to go out and experience what I've been teaching. I want you to go out and teach and give hope and love on the people. And I want you to come back to me and then report to me. But it's time for you to go out and do this. So he sends them out, and they come back, and they are so excited. They want to tell him all about it. Can you imagine the energy that they came back with? And they want to surround him and tell him all about it. And their energy, their positive energy, brings so many people around them, around Jesus and around these 12 disciples, that they don't even have time to eat because everybody wants some of what they have. Isn't that cool? That kind of energy. And Jesus says, God, let's get out of here. Let's go somewhere we can be alone. Let's go somewhere we can just decompress and I can hear what you have to say and we can recoup and we can become strong again. So they get into the boats. And they go across, and when they get there, the people have followed, and then people see them, and from all the regions come around, and they don't have time to rest even still, because Jesus has compassion on them also, because he knows that people are so hungry for words of hope and for words of kindness. I think we can all identify with the busyness of our days getting in the way of our time to be alone with God. We already spend our days trying to do this balancing act, but the balancing act that we work on is between work and family. It's drive time, it's golf, it's work, it's sales, it's all these other things that we do all day long. And we're trying to balance those things, let alone, and there's never enough time to do anything we want to do, let alone the time that we want to spend with God. And for just a few minutes, I would like you to just think about gathering all that is your day and all that is your week and that your life and all the demands and everything. And I want you to put it into this big bag right here. This huge bag that sits here. And we're going to put it all and clump it together. On the other side of the balance scale, we're kind of doing a scale here. On the other side, this is the stuff that we give our heart, mind, and soul, and stuff, it's invisible stuff, that we give to God. It's our Sunday worship. It's some of you come to God Talk and adult Bible study, all that kind of stuff. Does it feel a little bit Ellen's here? Can you see what I'm trying to create here? It seems like it might be a little out of balance, doesn't it? But this is not a guilt trip. This is not a guilt trip preaching time. I'm not asking you to seek more time with God. That's your stuff. I do that. I do the guilt trip with the marbles. For any of you who don't know, those marbles we're traveling through the year, and every week I put a marble from one side to the other. And that's when I do the guilt trip on everybody. Are you doing anything to get closer to God? Look how much time. We're more than halfway through the marbles of a year. What have you done this year to change your life and your relationship with God? That's that guilt trip. This is not the guilt trip going on. This is not about that at all, but I want you to be aware of the cost of constant activity, not only to your spirit, but to you physically. And for those of you who are sitting there chuckling, yes, I should have a mirror right here because I'm talking to myself too. You know, it's God got me to stop by giving me surgery, and it really worked. I did stop for a while. All of us just fill our time so incredibly. There is also a danger in constant activity in that it's a great way to avoid dealing with things that you don't want to deal with. Because on some level we know, well, if we stop long enough to listen to God, we probably already know a little bit about what He wants to say to us. And some of it we just don't want to hear, and we definitely don't want to have to deal with. So there's also that going on when we have our constant activity. And everybody just deals with it as best we can. But I want to get back to this balance idea of human reality and demands and our time with God and how it might feel like I'm suggesting that it's all out of balance. But if I may, I would like to suggest a totally new perspective. I want to come at this as always, from a different angle. And I want to talk about this out of balance and this time with the world versus the time with God reality. In the early church, there were these real cool people who were sometimes called fanatics, sometimes called hermits, sometimes called recluses. But these people were so devoted and so in love with God, and they couldn't understand how the world just kept on crashing in on them and not giving them the opportunity to spend time with God. And then also their church, what was forming and becoming the church, God, it was so full of people who weren't doing what they thought people should be doing. You know that line we always hear, that church is full of hypocrites, that people who don't come to church, and it's like the world is full of hypocrites. We continue to be people of the world when we come to church. We bring that with us. But this is a safe place where you can learn and grow and get away from that. But we bring all that is us in with us when we walk in the door. We don't leave that behind. But these people back then, they really couldn't deal with it. They were so frustrated and so angry and couldn't deal with the world and couldn't deal with what the church was saying. And they said, to heck with it. And they leave. And they go out into the wilderness. And some went and lived in caves. Some lived on nut and berries and just dressed in animal clothing and skins and stuff like that. And they just went away just to commune and hear only from God. Only from God. And I get that. And what God said when they got out there and could hear God's voice clearly is God said, to have a complete life and to be totally living in the nature and love of God, then you must be in relationship with other people. You cannot come out here and be in solitude like this forever and be fulfilling who you are as a child of God. You can't do it, which is not the message they wanted to hear. You must be in community with others in order to be complete. Let's go back and look at our lives a little bit from the perspective of what we do versus the time we spend with God. And if we could open our minds to this new perspective, God today would like to lighten your load. Lighten the load. Lighten anything that you might feel is a little bit guilty. In the reading from Mark 6, the disciples are living in the physical presence. Now remember, they're in the physical presence of Jesus. And they're listening and they're learning and they're praying and they're growing. And he sends them out 2 by 2 to go out and learn and evolve and do what he does. He taught them to go out and heal and to teach and to love. And then they return exhausted, but they also return excited. Now look at our lives again. Unlike the disciples who left Jesus physically, we go from a conscious presence. This would be a conscious presence of being in God, or being with God. And we go from that conscious presence back out to our work, our social, our shopping, our living. But this is not a reality. This is not reality if you think that's what you do. We never leave his presence. We do not leave him behind when the glass doors that are way too heavy close behind you. Even though God is out of our minds, even though he's out of our minds. As those created in the image of God, every cell has a piece of God in it. As those with the Holy Spirit living within us, we even have God, the Spirit, living within us. We may be not thinking of God, but we are never out of the presence of God. We're not there. We're never away from him. Every moment of your life, your work, your play, your family, your drive time, anything that's going on, you are still in the presence of God. It doesn't go away. If we get this, and the issue of balancing our time with God is eliminated and replaced with an issue of awareness of God's presence and awareness of our purpose and value in life, then we are really being more conscious of who we are as Christians. There is none of this, the world versus our time with God. Whether we like it or not, it is all the same. And that this is all over here and one. If you could become more aware of that, of the overlap, it never separates, then you're not going to feel like you're out of balance between your time with God and your time with the world. because it's one in the same. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.